everyone, this is Z. Welcome to another podcast. And today I have very good friend of mine and special guest, Mr. Jimmy Keegan, very well-known drummer. How are you, Jimmy?
Good.
Yeah, good
Friday,
to
getting ready for a weekend.
yeah, ready for the weekend. So
Need a cowbell and a big snare drum. Dook, dook, dook.
we are musicians, right? We work on weekends, so it's not like
Yeah, no, yeah, just getting started.
so. So what's your up to right these days?
Well, yeah. So I recently picked up the gig playing with the band ABC.
Oh, that's a
So I
legendary band, right?
yeah, British band. Big hits. Trevor Horn produced stuff, and Poison Arrow and How to Be a Millionaire and Be Near Me, all that kind of stuff. It's fun. I made a joke at some point that doing so much prog stuff that I'm like, I would make jokes like, I just long for a backbeat. I just want to play in four. And
And that's
careful what
working.
you ask for.
And that's working out for you. Good.
Yeah, there's like four drum fills in the whole set, and it's like just keeping time the whole. And it's great. I mean, the band is amazing. Everyone in the band, and Martin's a great guy, and
Hmm.
definite
Yeah.
legendary stuff. So it's I'm a huge fan. I grew up listening to Trevor Horn, and anything that
Hmm.
he touched, I was like, oh, what's he doing there? I want to hear that. Oh, this is great.
Yeah. So you just finished the first leg, I think, right?
Yeah, well, they don't really. I mean, they're at a stage now where they just book tours. They're doing this series
Okay.
of tours with Howard Jones,
Okay.
and we did a first tour was us, Howard Jones, and Haircut 100, and this one will be just us and Howard Jones and Richard Blade.
Hmm.
He'll be doing like a DJ set and everything like that. So it'll be cool. He'll be heading out with us on all the dates. So it'll be fun.
Okay. That's
A lot of
awesome.
a
So
lot
so
of reminiscing.
so you're starting again next year, early next year, like
Yeah, February.
February. Okay. That's awesome.
And
So
and he usually does. If for anyone that's watching in the UK or Europe, he usually has a British band
hmm
for the UK European dates. But for some reason, it's been mostly here in the US. It's been that same band, just with me and Toshi, the guitar, Toshi Yanagi playing guitar.
hmm
Um, so we'll see about if we do any dates in Europe. He already has a guy, so I mean I don't want to,
step one.
someone's got a gig. I want him to keep having his gig. I don't want to take his gig. But if they think about it, maybe I'll be in Europe and doing
Yeah,
that. So
that's so you've been in Europe with some other bands as well, right? With Sparks and
yeah, Spock's
others.
beard and
Yeah.
a few other little things. Spock's is most what I did most consistently.
Hmm. So
Um,
so you recently so with the rehearsals with this like well-known established band, how basically what's the approach is like they send you the song set list in advance or what's how it
yeah, in fact,
works?
rehearsal was almost non-existent. We only did one day of rehearsal. They've been going for a long time, so I was the
Hmm.
new guy. So it was really just to kind of bring me into the fold and give me any odd cues. But they gave me a set list, a couple of months ahead of time.
Hmm.
They gave me a tentative set list, and then I got a finalized set list about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And but bands like that, it's really what I'm learning is what do they do different? Because I already know the material for the most part. I
Yeah.
grew up listening to it. So if a an artist such as that, from the 80s, 90s, it's
Yeah.
70s, whatever, it's been around that long, most likely I'm going to already know at least their hits.
Hmm.
So I mean, there's not a whole lot to learn as much as, okay, what do you do differently in the show? Are there any segues? Are there any, you know, just, live things that you do that are specifically for the live set?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are coming to Chicago. Maybe I would love to,
We are going to
catch
be
up,
in Waukegan,
walk again.
Illinois. I don't know how far away that is from you.
I think it's doable. Maybe a couple of hours drive, maybe. So I'll
I'll,
keep an
I'll
eye
let you
on the
know.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'll let you know. In the middle of February, though. Yay!
Yeah.
Can't wait to tour in February.
Yeah,
Gonna
maybe
do Colorado and
some snow
Chicago.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're up in Connecticut and everything like that. Oh God, I'm gonna have to bring like a giant coat and
So you are on a tour bus with this tour, or like you're flying around, or what's
no, it's a bus tour. Yeah,
bus tour? Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So you are in another band. It's called Patron Seeking Animal,
yeah.
right? So
And
what's
that I literally just got the final version a couple days ago. Um, I believe it's coming out in January.
Okay.
Um,
I mean
I'm
that that band is like throwing records like every year. I don't know how you guys do it.
so John Baygold, and that's for anyone wonders, that's how you pronounce his name, Baygold.
Bagel. Okay.
Just think Baygold. That's more or less how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Um, and so he writes constantly. And
Hmm.
either he's writing for Pattern Seeking Animals, or he's writing, film, television music, or he's writing, jingle stuff. I mean, he's constantly in that state. So he's
Hmm.
gotten used to the idea of just always putting stuff out.
Hmm.
He also has a backlog of material from like when he and Dave wrote stuff together. Dave Marrows from Spox.
Hmm.
Um, they did a lot of writing together. That's how they got to know each other. And so there's this backlog of material that he's been drawing on, where he'll take chunks of material. He'll like, oh, I remember this song. I didn't like the song, but it had a great bridge. Let
Hmm.
me go see that bridge and see what I can do. And then he'll build a whole nother song out of that bridge. A
Hmm.
lot of the Spock stuff that he wrote, after Neil left, was sort of based around that as well. It's stuff that he and Dave had written together, or
Hmm.
someone else, and they would go back in and revisit it and go, what can we take from this? And then it would spring into a whole new song.
Okay. So are you what
So
level you are involved in the songwriting process?
I'm not. I don't get into the songwriting with that. Um, I get involved in the sense of when he brings the demo to me,
Hmm.
he'll send me demo stuff a few days ahead of time to kind of, have an idea what's coming. Because sometimes the songs are difficult, so I want to get a chance to hear a little bit, like have an idea what's coming.
Hmm.
But that allows me to kind of make decisions in terms of it. I wouldn't call it writing. I would call it more of arrangement. Taking a song from the drummer's perspective and going, okay, now what do
Yeah.
I want to do with it? And on occasion, we'll make changes that have some kind of an impact in the song, but nothing that I would consider writing. More just like, well, I wouldn't really do this,
Yeah.
or this is great. Let's elaborate on that. Because John actually programs really great parts.
Hmm.
So for me, it's really just kind of like just humanizing what he's done and then adding whatever is
Yeah.
my
Flavor.
signature to it and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
So, yeah, so you also released your solo record few months ago, or
yeah,
maybe a year ago, I think.
it's yeah,
Ma-
March. It was March.
Yeah,
And that's the cool thing about doing an independent record that's completely independent is that I'm not reliant on a record label's, you
yeah,
know, I mean, you do that. That's your same thing. It's you just
yeah,
put the thing out.
yeah,
So I'm actually going to do a whole nother round of promo on it, because at some point, it's just me, so I can sit here and do promo, and then I have to work.
yeah,
I have to go on the road, or I have to get do sessions, and I have to do gigs around town. And so the idea of sitting down and making content around this record, it's like, well, sure, I don't really have the time to do it. I've got to stay alive.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, most of the independent bands do this mistakes. They put all the energy on the songs and recording, and then it's when it's time to market, you are out of energy, or maybe out of time, basically.
Yeah, well, in my
So,
case, the album was recorded over such a long period of time that it wasn't. It was more just a matter of I had my best friend, a guy named Greg Lestraps, um, also wrote several of the songs on the record and plays
hmm.
on it, and he's also a filmmaker.
Hmm.
So he works with me and either just comes up with the ideas, or we work together and we'll make these little film things. But part of the idea for me with the record is, it's I get one of the criticisms I see come up is that I didn't write anything.
Hmm.
So I can clear some of that up. I don't do a lot of writing. I've never actually been tasked to write.
Hmm.
All the bands that I've been in really already had material, like Pattern Seeking Animals or Spock's Beard.
Yeah.
I get into arrangements.
Hmm.
So as a songwriter, it was something that was never really nurtured. When I decided I'm going to do an album, initially I was thinking I would sit down with some of my songwriter friends and write songs.
Hmm.
And because I have ideas, so let me sit down with them, and then in the process, maybe I'll learn something. But that made me think, well, wait a minute, I've already kind of done that.
Hmm.
They wrote these songs, like Greg. Greg's got a library of material. He's an amazing songwriter.
Hmm.
A lot of his material is for him. It
Hmm.
would be weird if I sang it. It would be weird if anyone else sang it.
Hmm.
But there's also a huge amount of material that's just great songs.
Yeah.
And in my life as a session musician, that's what I did a lot of. That's how I paid my bills. There was a long stretch of the 90s, when my daughter was really young, where I was working out of a studio in North Hollywood.
Hmm.
And it was owned by two songwriters, as well as they were really good friends with a bunch of other songwriters. So myself, Kevin Wyatt, Tim Pierce, the guitar player,
Hmm.
and a handful of other musicians were sort of like their go-to
Go-to guys.
session
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
So like on my record, the first album, the first song, the Fisherman 3, was written by a guy named Mark Spiro.
Hmm.
Mark Spiro was one of those songwriters that would come in and around that studio,
Hmm.
and I did an album for him, and that was one of the songs on that record. Well, it didn't sell 10 million copies. It sold however many copies it sold. I
Yeah.
don't even know.
I
I don't
mean,
even want to fathom.
I mean, I've listened to record few times and it's been on rotation here and there. Pretty great songwriting there already, and production wise, I mean, it's a good record. My favorite, I think, is 7 a.m., which is very like
Thank you. That's one of Greg's, and
yeah,
it's the one I actually was involved in the writing on.
yeah,
I wrote the last third of the song.
yeah.
Me and the bass player, the weird little syncopated bit.
Yeah. So I mean that's awesome. Yeah, I mean so wish you good luck. Maybe next time you'll do another round of promotion for this, and I think.
Yeah. Well, the idea was that if these guys already have these songs
Hmm.
that nobody's really heard, I mean, some of the songs are just covers. I just love that song, a Split
Yeah.
End song, a Talking Head song. I just did a cover.
Hmm.
There's a bit of a story behind them, like why I chose those songs, but
Hmm.
okay, whatever. But part of it is this whole idea that I have these friends, both songwriters and like the musicians that play on the album, that are just brilliant, brilliant writers and musicians.
Hmm.
The album isn't just about me as an artist, it's about them. I
Yeah.
mean, if you listen to the album just listen to the bass playing on the album, there's three or four bass players in there. Dave Meros is on it.
Hmm.
Jennifer Oberly is on it. Uh, who else on? Alex Evans is on it. Alex Evans plays with God, who is it? Anyway, they're all just remarkable, remarkable musicians. If you just listen to the bass playing on it, it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Steve Fackety, Eric Dover, the guitar players on it. If you listen to the guitar player on it,
Yeah.
it's not Steve Vai kind of stuff. It's Tim Pierce kind of stuff. It's
Yeah. It's more
it's Lukather
studio
kind of stuff.
guys,
It's session
like
playing, like
sessions,
real perfect parts, perfect tone. Knowing just the little nuances to add and everything like that. So, if you want to criticize that I didn't write the songs, all right, whatever. I don't. Neither did Pat Benatar on her first album, and it still was a big hit. But it's more about all those musicians and those songwriters and
musicians. I mean,
celebrating them.
and it took you some time because of that, because there are like a lot of other musicians involved in the recording, writing
Yeah,
process.
if I had $50,000 to dump into it, just here I have some cash. I could call them and say, come over here and track this. But I'm really dealing with friends and their generosity and they're out touring and doing stuff as well that's paying their bills. So I get sessions when I get sessions. So it takes time.
Yeah. Talking about the session, one of your favorite, I think most memorable session is you were on the Santana Supernatural record, right?
Yeah.
So tell us the story about it, how you
Okay.
get that.
So the studio that I mentioned that I worked out of, the two guys that own it are Baha'is. They are members of the Baha'i faith.
Hmm.
It's now the relevance of that is their background is with they're part of the whole group Seals and Crofts, right?
Hmm.
Remember, Summer Breeze and all that sort of stuff. So Seals and Crofts were Baha'is. So they're all derivative of that group of Seals and Crofts family, and Jamie's a cousin. Ren, the other guy, was married to one of the sisters of their wives. Okay, so there's this batch of musicians that kind of trickled down from that.
Hmm.
So I started working with them. They start introducing me to other songwriters. One of the songwriters they introduced me to was a guy named J.B. Eckel.
Hmm.
J.B. Eckel was in the band War for many years, toured for many years with Carlos Santana.
Mhm.
When Carlos decided he was going to, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make a record. I haven't made a record in a long time. He told JB, dude, get me some songs. I know you're a great songwriter, which he is. He's an amazing songwriter. Get me some songs and let's cut these things.
Mhm.
JB thought, well, let's make sure I get on this record. So he called another friend, is a guy named Casey Porter.
Mhm.
Casey Porter, also a Baha'i, has written for, I mean, name a great Latin artist: Luis Miguel, Ricky Martin. I did a session with him where we were tracked with Selena.
Mhm.
It's his list of artists that he has more Latin Grammys, and he looks like he could be my cousin. He's kind of got red hair, and he grew up in Guatemala, so he learned Spanish, but he's otherwise looks like he could be, a cousin of mine. So the two of them started writing songs. They did a series of sessions with other session guys who I won't name, but you've heard of all of them.
Mhm.
And these guys came in and basically they did session 101. They did what you would normally do on a session. This is here, you give me the song. I'm
Mhm.
just going to do a bit, my version of the song. But nobody started asking questions. Nobody got curious. So they kept getting the same session over and over again, except this time it was with so-and-so's technique or so-and-so's technique, whatever.
Mhm.
But it was the same session. So we were getting frustrated. Well, JB kept getting on Casey's case about why don't we call. I had done a record with Mike Porcaro from
Mhm.
Toto
Mhm.
for JB, and he kept saying, "Dude, they're an amazing rhythm section." Which any drummer with Mike Porcaro is an amazing rhythm section. You can't be bad with Mike Porcaro.
Yeah.
He was
Out of this world.
far away one of the greatest bass players ever. So they finally reluctantly brought us in, and we listened to the demos. Well, we listened to the sessions that had been done, and sitting there looking at each other, going, "Hey, look, it's so and so, it's so and so."
Yeah.
And the first thing we did is got curious and said, "Well, isn't this for Santana?" And we're like, "Yeah." Well, where's the Santana part? It doesn't feel like a Santana song. It just feels like a good song,
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like a Santana song. So Mike just started gutting these songs and adding all these syncopated parts. And then, as a group, we started collectively turning them into what we thought would be a Santana song.
Mhm.
Oh, we'll add some horns here. Oh, we'll add some B3 here and stuff like that. All the little things, and leave these gaps for Carlos to play.
Mhm.
And spent 2 days tracking, and then Luis Conte came in and played percussion, and all these things came in, and then they sent it off to Carlos. I think we were like the first batch of songs that he got,
Mhm.
and he chose them to go on the record. Uh, Primavera went on the album. We did a cover of a Lifehouse song that I've since covered as well and done a video for,
Mhm.
using all those tracks.
Mhm.
There were other songs recorded, but they didn't make the cut for various reasons. Up to couldn't get the rights because there was another cover we did, but then just ran out of songs.
Mhm.
In the session, Mike leans over to Casey and says, "Hey man, who's singing this stuff?" Casey goes, "Well, probably a singer. He had a singer, a couple of regular singers." He's like, Carlos wants to be relevant. What might be a good idea is he's never been really associated with any one singer. Why doesn't he call some of these hot young artists
Mhm.
and use his connections at Arista and get whoever's the happening artist and have them sing the song?"
Yeah.
And Casey goes, "That's a good idea, huh?" So of course he told Clive Davis, and Clive Davis turned around and said, "I had this great idea." Wait a minute. Okay, you made the phone calls and you did the deals, but it was still Mike Porcaro's idea.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, it was just a friend of a friend, series of events. You never know exactly where
Yeah.
that session is going to come from, or that contact.
Yeah, so that's awesome story. So typically, with these popular artists in LA scene, since you are very involved in this Hollywood and LA stuff, how many usually songs? I've heard like stories when one song sent to like various mixers or engineers, and they track independently, and then the producer finalize the song. So typically, is everybody get paid or like?
Yeah, well, now sessions can be. I mean, you never know what's going on. Often there's 6 producers involved, and And you'll see a list of writers, and you'll see those memes where, like, Freddie
Yeah.
Mercury wrote Bohemian Rhapsody, but, WAP was written by, like, 35 people. But it's exactly what you said. It'll start with a root song
Hmm.
by, like, one or two songwriters, either, team or one guy, usually like Max Martin or something like that, or
Hmm.
Diane Warren. And they'll write that song, and then they turn it into the artist, and the primary producer of the album, or the executive producer of the album, will
Hmm.
go, yeah, I kind of think this is an interesting song. Maybe we could fix up this chorus a little bit. So they'll send it to somebody else
Hmm.
who they know is really good at doing that kind of thing. And they'll do a version of the song and fix up the chorus. Well, now they've added a bass line, or
Hmm.
they've added a guitar bit, and that carries on to the next stage. And that may happen 3 or 4 times. So by the time the song is over, there's 15 writers and 34 musicians, but not everyone makes it on the cut. And
Hmm.
so I get stuff every once in a while where it's like, hey, can you just add hi-hat to this thing? Or can you add some cymbals or snare drum or, full kit? But it's like when you hear what exactly made the record,
Yeah, it's
I'll listen
quite
to it going, I don't even hear myself in this song. I'm credited on it, but couldn't tell you what I played on it.
okay. So, I mean, even if you add, for example, your hi-hat, is it like a paid gig for LA
Yeah, it's
musicians?
a
Okay.
session. It's a
Session.
session like
Okay.
any other. I mean, for me, a session is if you're hiring me to play, I'm going to bring my stuff and I'm going to play whatever you need.
Okay.
What I end up playing is not relevant. It's a session.
Session. Okay.
I mean, I've actually done mouth drums. Beatbox for somebody. It's still a session.
So talking about the mouth, I think you're a voiceover artist as well, and you were a child artist as well. So, and you were credited on some movies as well. So tell us stories about that. I think one
Well,
of the famous movies were like Over the Top, I believe.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing I started playing drums. That was the first thing that I'm going to be a drummer. And my dad saw an ad in the newspaper back when people read newspapers for an open casting call
Hmm.
for a TV show, but it didn't say what. It just said, come down to this place at this time. And several hundred kids all lined up outside the building. And I went in, and the idea is that they wanted kids that could do stuff.
Hmm.
And I went in, so I play drums. And I set up and played my drums, and they called me back. And eventually I got the show. So I was on this thing called Real Kids, which there used to be a show called Real People.
Hmm.
I did a kids version. We did 2 shows, and that's as far as it got. But it got me my union cards.
Hmm.
So right away, my dad saw another thing about there's another show that plays around town. Let's go audition for that. So I went and auditioned for that and got that. So now I was surrounded by a batch of creatives, a bunch of kids my age, more or less, a few years older, a few years younger. And I'm going, wow, there's a bunch of kids that can do all this. And they could sing and dance and do this. And we did this show every Sunday,
Hmm.
usually at the Roxy for the most of our
Hmm.
run. But it also introduced me to a lot of people, a lot of families that knew more about the business,
Hmm.
which I got an agent and kept going. And my parents were always supportive in the sense that they never pushed me to do anything. They just asked, like, do you want to keep doing this?
Hmm.
Yes, I do. So I started getting into the acting scene, started getting calls. I had a very generic little boy, blonde, classic American look. So I
Hmm.
would get auditions a lot. I
Hmm.
audition for everything. If you see a movie that's got Will Wheaton in it, I audition for it. If you see a movie that's got Corey Feldman in it, I audition for it. I was right there with him, one of those other kids. And usually they got it. Sometimes I got it. I didn't get anything that was like, holy crap, I've got this major starring role. But I got a handful of movies. I got a few commercials, a couple of TV shows.
Hmm.
Along the way, my agent asked me if I would be interested in doing voiceovers. Well, I'm a huge cartoon nut. So, yeah, I want to do voiceovers. They had a studio in their offices, a little booth.
Hmm.
We did a quick thing, and before I knew it, I was going on auditions. The first thing I auditioned for, I got. And it was a cartoon called The Littles.
Hmm.
And that ran for 3 years, 3.5 years. The same guy that cast me for that also cast me for Transformers and G.I. Joe. And what I did with that is all the PSAs at the end.
Hmm.
And now you know. And knowing is half the battle. All that stuff. And it's weird because like I did some voices in the main shows if they had some random kid like, oh no, stuff like that. These little, wild spots. But
Yeah.
for the most part, that's what I did. There was like 4 or 5 of us kids, and we sometimes the PSA would have two of us, sometimes it would have three of us, but
Hmm.
inevitably it was like, like the four of us and we did all the voices. And they were the same. The GI Joe and the Transformer spots were the same thing. We just did them just a different character name. Oh, it's Bumblebee, or oh, it's I don't know the GI Joe
So,
character
so,
names. So,
so you were on the Transformers as well, or
yeah,
yeah?
Transformers, GI Joe. I did.
Okay,
There's a company called Deke Enterprises, DIC,
okay.
and they did Inspector Gadget. They did the Littles. They did Heathcliff, and
Mhm.
inevitably I'd end up on one or two of those cartoons per season, just because they'd need a kid's voice to say something, some random line.
Yeah,
So a lot of my credits are just that. They're one-liners and stuff like that. But, I was
but
in a studio every week pretty much.
yeah, so that's like a good memorable things that you have done in the past, which is so tell us about I mean, you were in the Sparks period. How many records you were involved with Sparks?
I did well, okay, so I tracked as a drummer 2 albums, and
Mm-hmm.
I did background vocals on X.
Okay.
And that was because Nick had already picked up the Cirque du Soleil job, and they weren't quite finished,
Mm-hmm.
but he had to go. So
Mm-hmm.
he did all his lead parts and some of the backgrounds, and then he took off to do that gig. And then I started getting calls like, "Hey man, you feel like doing some vocals?" So if you listen to X, I'm about 40% of the background vocals.
Okay.
In some cases, I'm the only person singing background vocals on the song. In some cases, I'm just doing like one line.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was because there were changes made, and auto tune was still kind of a new thing. So if they made chordal changes or they wanted to change the melody, they didn't have Nick available to change a part, like a background vocal part. So they would
Yeah.
auto tune it, but they would add me to make it real and not sound
Yeah.
plastic. But that way you still have his voice and the characteristics of his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And if and anyone says that's cheating can kiss my ass. That's called punting. It's like, well, we have to do this, and
Yeah.
but he's
I
out.
mean, you can use tools and technology, I mean, to
Yeah,
fix the
it was
issues and problems. I mean,
yeah, it
I'm
wasn't
all,
because he can't sing. Nick has unbelievable pitch and is an amazing
yeah,
singer.
of course.
So it was just a way to work around an idea change. And so
Yeah.
I would come in, and part of it was I would do an impression of him. That way I would double it.
Mm-hmm.
They would use his voice, and then I would double it. Instead of using an auto-tune part twice, I would come in and do the double.
Double. Okay.
So there's a lot of bits where you hear Nick's voice doubled, but it's actually not Nick, it's me.
Mm-hmm. So thanks again, Jimmy. Like my introduction to you were like you recorded my drums on Far and Air record,
Yeah.
and when my one of my drummer left, I was like in a bit of problem like situation. Okay, who will record the record? And I got connected to you somehow, and then you were very generous to record all the drums in one day of that
Oh
record.
yeah, that's right. The first one was like, whoosh.
And now it's a really good co- working with you. It's very smooth. Like I send you my tracks, you do whatever is best for it. So thanks again. Lot of unheard material is coming very soon from my side, which is like featured your drummings. And
Excellent.
yeah, so I'll be releasing next year a lot of new Fire Garden stuff. So Jamie, thanks for your time. Tell us what's next for you, and like,
Well, Pattern Seeking Animals is in January.
mhm.
We're trying to book some dates as usual. It's still a pain in the ass trying to book dates, but we're working on it. Another ABC tour. I'm always playing around LA, and I have a group called 90s Rock Show, which is like a performance thing. It's all the music of the 90s, grunge stuff with the
Mhm.
string section.
Mhm.
So it's a cover band, but it's like a cover band on 10.
Yeah.
I work with a few other guys that do that same kind of thing. I have a Zeppelin tribute. I have a Peter Gabriel tribute. That's new, that we've been doing a bunch of dates.
Mhm.
And it's weird because I'm not a big tribute person, but the people that I work with, if you see them, you're like, oh yeah, I want to do that gig too.
Yeah.
I've actually like Brian Tishy is back is filled in for me, and so it's like they're like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, why don't you see who this guy is and check it out first? And it's like, I send them the links, and they come back going, yeah, man. So what does it pay? I'm like, yeah. See, now you want to do it, right?
Yeah, I love Brian. I mean, he's like a big Zeppelin guy, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I needed a fill in for Zusa. Well, let's call Brian Tishy, and he did. He did a great job. But it's like they're reluctant to do it until you show them, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to work with this guy too. So yeah.
So, thanks again, Jimmy, for your time, and wish you best luck for the next year.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And
And
thanks for having me on the records, man. That's great stuff and looking forward to some more stuff.
yeah, some more stuff coming very soon, and we'll be in touch. Thanks.
Awesome. See you, buddy.